I'm Shelby Williams with Plano City Council, and if my suit and tie didn't give it away, I stand with the people of Ukraine. Stand strong and fight hard. Tonight, we actually started with a work session on economic development. Now, we offer a couple of different economic development incentives for different things. Chapter 380 grants are for companies that bring jobs to Plano. We offer various incentives for that. And then sometimes property tax abatements, which if you've heard me speak on this before, and I have several times, I agree with the idea of property tax abatements for businesses, companies that are going to increase the property value. They're going to come in and build something or make improvements that increase the taxable value of a property. So I don't believe they should be penalized for that construction or that improvement. I just want to open that up to everybody so that they are not penalized, individuals, small businesses, etc. But the focus of tonight's work session was on economic development. Now, we had a long, robust discussion. We didn't take any action tonight. We didn't even get down to actual strategy or tactics. We're just going to explore alternatives for economic development within the confines of state law. Now, some of the things to balance, and I'm just going to list the things off here. We, of course, have seen a massive influx of people and businesses to Texas, particularly North Texas, in the past several years for a variety of reasons. But the fact is that we have some great economic opportunity in North Texas, and we have more economic opportunity coming. Any incentives that we offer to businesses of any size, I want to make sure that it's a net benefit to Plano. This doesn't necessarily mean a net short-term financial benefit, but it has to be a net benefit. Otherwise, what are we doing? But that benefit can be measured in a variety of ways. One of which is actually maintaining the long-term viability of the city. Now, obviously, our cities further north, such as Frisco and McKinney notably, they're making some pretty aggressive moves to grow their commercial base and bring nationally and globally recognized brands to their cities. And I think they're playing, kind of trying to catch up to what Plano did over many years, which is fine, but we don't want to compete for the sake of competing. At least I don't. I don't want to win just to win. I want to make sure there's a net long-term benefit, but I want to make sure that we retain vitality as a city over decades, not just years, and certainly not just a year. Industry makeup, individual companies can grow, can shrink, can go bust. A good example is JCPenney. 3-4 decades ago, I don't think anybody anticipated what was going to happen where JCPenney would be at right now, and that was a significant presence in the city of Plano. So we have to be prepared for that kind of market shift and be prepared to roll with the punches, and that we're not so focused on any one sector or even industry that we risk fading into irrelevance. And we have, out of professional services jobs, Plano has 3 times the national average of professional services jobs within the city. Now, this can be professional services within the financial sector, within a variety of areas, so it's not necessarily all in one sector. But I think, and I've argued for this before, that we need to cultivate a diversified employment base of a variety of not only job types, but sectors and industries, so we don't end up being like a mining town after the mine runs out of ore, or an oil town after the well goes dry. We need to make sure that we can sustain a variety of, and I keep saying the word variety, but it's important, a variety of twists and turns in marketplace evolution. We also want to make sure that Plano is a place that people want to come to, and that businesses, companies want to come to. The next corporation that's going to relocate from the West Coast, we want them to think of Plano, but we also want to be in the position of picking and choosing. If Plano's on their short list, we want the luxury of saying, thanks, yeah, we'd like to receive your offer, or no thanks, we're not interested. Good luck elsewhere. And so we have to be that destination of choice. Now there are many things that go into that, and actual monetary incentives might be the least of it. We want to make sure that we have a good balance of residential versus commercial. We want to have a great base of jobs for our people, but we want to make sure we don't become all or overwhelming jobs. We have a strong corporate base in Plano. We are a corporate destination, and we want to maintain that healthy reputation with a healthy mix of not only industry and sector, but residential versus commercial. Now, over the past few years, it's been touted that the majority of our property tax revenue is commercial, but in that commercial calculation is also multifamily residential. So it's not what you and I would typically think of as commercial. It's lumped into the commercial category under the tax rules because rental properties, multifamily properties, are valued differently from single family properties. Basically, with rental properties, you get a rent every month. So there's market activity every month that you can measure. With single family homes that are owned, the market activity for a given house might only happen every couple of decades. And so you don't have that same constant base for market viability. And so the Central Appraisal District, their only job is to try to come up with the fair market value of the property every year. That's easy to do with apartments because they've got the fair market value gauged every month based on what the market will bear. And that constantly changes. Not so for single family homes that are bought and sold for people to live in. So anyway, long story short, when we say most of our property taxes, the majority, 52% I think, are commercial, a good chunk of that commercial category is actually apartments, which are still residential by the real meaning of the word. So we want to strike that balance, and we want to make sure that we've got a good jobs-based, but also that we've got a good residential community. Addison is an example, basically an inverse bedroom community, the opposite of a bedroom community. They're almost all commercial, and they've got, I think, 14,000 residents, but a ginormous actual commercial base. And then you've got an actual bedroom community, which is almost all residential and no commercial. We've got a great blend here in Plano. That doesn't mean that we need one job per resident. It does mean that we need to cultivate and maintain a healthy mixture. I would be okay in diversifying the actual zoning that's permitted if we do it strategically. I don't want an oil refinery in Plano, but I would be okay with some light manufacturing and light industrial if it's done in the right part of town. That part of town may not even exist right now, but as some areas come up for redevelopment, we might be able to identify some appropriate areas once there aren't any operational businesses there anymore, and maybe there's a sector of the city that would make sense for that down the road. One of the things that's worth looking at, I think. And the last thought I have is that we need to be creative. When we offer incentives, whether it's to giant corporations or small businesses, I think we need to be creative in recognizing the value that a business might bring to the city. Again, big business or small business, and appropriately incentivizing that, which is partially simply recognizing that we don't want to punish people for bringing value vis-a-vis the property tax system. Toyota is a great example. They took a green field and then built a ginormous headquarters there. Well, that is now, the taxable value of that land is now much greater than it was when it was a green field, but it didn't necessitate nearly that much in the additional cost of city services, which is the whole purpose of a tax abatement, is to be fair. Again, I just want to extend that same ability to everybody. We had a pretty short meeting tonight. We didn't actually have any items for individual consideration. We did have a departmental report from Public Works. Director Dan Prendergast gave us basically a rundown. I'm going to touch on some highlights here for you. First, City Manager Mark Israelson noted, and I want to echo appreciation for Dan and his department and their crews who worked literally around the clock during the mini freeze we had last week, and much more during Snowmageddon last year. Thankfully, what we had last week didn't scratch the surface of what we had last year, but they still worked very diligently around the clock, got very little sleep, and took care of a great many needs, so thank you. There are 361 staff members in the Public Works Department, and they have a budget of $175 million. Now, a large part of their budget, of course, being Public Works, does not just go to salaries, but they cover water, sewer, streets, drainage, and traffic. So there's a massive area of responsibility there, which is core to the central function of city government after public safety. They took in last year 15,000 requests in calendar year 2021. And I actually asked in the meeting, is that representative of a given year? We did have Snowmageddon last year. And they have a new tracking system that aggregates all these requests, so they don't actually have enough years data to make a fair comparison. They really started measuring in 2020, which was also not a representative year by anything that we're used to. But they did take about a little over 15,000 requests, with broken down into nearly 123,000 tasks. So an individual request to fix a pothole, for instance, might be broken down into 5 discrete tasks in order to actually get the job done. We have over 1,000 miles of sewer pipe in the city of Plano, and over 1,500 miles of 1,500 miles of water pipe. Those are completely different. And over 50,000 water valves. So a couple of fun facts there. The average age of our streets is 38 years old. Some streets are much older, some much newer. 99% of our streets are concrete. So you will notice in some parts of town the black asphalt overlays. Not only does this extend the life of the concrete underneath, but it provides a smoother ride. And despite what some will say that those emit toxic fumes, that's only when they're being poured and they dry very quickly. So the same can be said of any plastics in your house. When they're being poured, when they're actually becoming the product you want to buy in the end, then it's very toxic, and I wouldn't advise being anywhere around it. But once it's solidified, they're safe. Just maybe don't eat them. Now, fun fact, I had said before that it would cost about $2 billion to replace our roads in Plano, like if we just up and replaced all of our roads at once. That actually did not include a lot of the alleys and maybe not the sidewalks and everything, but the figure we got tonight was about $3.5 billion to replace all of our roads, residential streets, and alleys. Now, thankfully, we're not going to try to do that all at once. Because of the state of our city, how built out we are, I think only 4% of our land is left undeveloped. That's a lot of pavement. And so if the average lifespan of a road is 30 years or so, maybe a little longer with the asphalt overlays, we need to be able to plan for replacing roughly 1/30 of our entire concrete infrastructure every year. So part of the way we do that is with bonds, like the bond package we passed last year. Bonds provide a long-term means of financing so that we're not basing on operational costs, but we have to be careful of the cost of debt service, paying interest on our debt. The more debt we get, the more interest we're paying. So there is a definite balancing act there. And the response time to fix our potholes after they're reported in the last 3 years, roughly 3 years, has gone from 20 days to fewer than 5 days. So excellent work to our Public Works Department. And there was a question during the meeting, and I want to advise everybody that the chlorine burn is coming, affectionately called the chlorine burn. What this is a period during roughly the month of March every year where the normal disinfectant that's used in our water supply with the water district is chlorine and ammonia, a combination of the two combined to make chloramine, which is the normal disinfectant that cleans our water and keeps bacteria out in our water supply. for various reasons, which I'll go on to in a whole other video. In fact, I probably should at some point. We remove the ammonia from the mixture for about a month so that it's just chlorine. Now, chloramine and chlorine smell differently. So through 11 months out of the year, chloramine is in the water, it's disinfecting the water, and you don't have a chlorine smell because it's not chlorine, it's chloramine when the chemicals are combined, chlorine and ammonia. But they remove the ammonia for a month and it's just chlorine. Now, obviously that kills bacteria, otherwise they wouldn't use it in swimming pools. But that also means you can get a chlorine smell, and people with chlorine sensitivities can have a really hard go of it during the month of March. That has gotten a little bit better in the past couple of years as we've been able to take more proactive action in flushing the system. So, by the way, when you see somebody with the city on the side of the road just letting water run through a fire hydrant, and it seems like a terrible waste, it is a waste, or at least it's regrettable. But the whole reason for that is to circulate water through the system sufficiently to cycle the disinfectant through the entire water network. Water, of course, is liquid, and so it runs through the entire network of pipes. So flushing the water through the fire hydrants is the best way to circulate that water and make sure that it's getting through the system fast enough. Especially in the summer months, the more stagnant the water is, the hotter it is, the more of a breeding ground for bacteria it becomes. So these are unfortunate things which I ultimately want to see not only better water infrastructure. We've got 1,000 miles of sewer pipe to replace and 1,500 miles of water pipe to eventually replace. It's kind of the same philosophy as replacing our streets. It's got to be done periodically over time, not all at once. But not only would I like to see updated infrastructure, but I'd like to see biofiltration, bioactively active filtration, biologically active filtration, I'm sorry, at all of our water plants that are producing our water, in addition to UV sanitation. I think it's the Wiley plant is the largest in the North Texas Municipal Water District, is the largest UV plant in the country, if not the world. But I'd like to see the capability expanded to have BAF, biologically active filtration, at all of our sites, and coupled with the UV sanitation. So with that was a pretty long report for not having any items for individual consideration. But that's what's up. And again, stand strong, Ukraine. I'm Shelby Williams with Plano City Council. God bless.